Here's something every Catholic parent already knows. Every child has a guardian angel. You learned that in first grade. You taught it to your own kids. You pray the angel of God prayer before bed. You believe it. You've believed it for as long as you can remember, which means you probably stopped thinking carefully about it a long time ago. Good. Hold on to that belief. Because by the time I finish, it's going to mean something completely different to you than it did 60 seconds ago. Something that, if you have children, may be the most uncomfortable spiritual realization you've sat with in years. If you've never seen this channel before, I'm Raymond. I spent 35 years teaching Catholic theology at a high school in Covington, Kentucky before I retired. I studied at the Athenaeum of Ohio. I have taught the theology of the guardian angels to students in every grade from freshman to senior. I thought I understood this topic. I thought I had it filed correctly in the right drawer of my mind. Comforting, true, settled. What I'm about to share with you comes directly from the documented letters and testimonies of Padre Pio, from the scholarship of Far, Chad Ripperger, and from a particular evening I spent 3 winters ago, sitting with a grief I could not explain, reading through Pio's Epistolario at my kitchen table, trying to find something that would help me understand where my wife Margaret had gone. What I found instead was something that shook me far more than I expected. Subscribe if you haven't, because this is not a one-time topic. Now let me tell you what Padre Pio actually said about guardian angels. Not in the abstract, not in catechism language, in his own words, written in a letter to his spiritual daughter, Raffaelina Cerase, sometime between 1914 and 1915. These letters are collected in what scholars call the Epistolario, Pio's personal correspondence, which runs to hundreds of pages and constitutes one of the most intimate theological documents of the 20th century. In letter 64, Pio wrote this, and I want you to hear it slowly, not skim it, not pass through it the way we pass through prayers we've memorized. He wrote, "How close to us stands one of the celestial spirits, who from the cradle to the grave never leaves us for an instant. He guides us. He protects us like a friend, like a brother. This should be a source of constant consolation for us, especially during the saddest times of our lives. From the cradle to the grave. Never leaves us for an instant." Now. Most people read that and feel warm, reassured. Exactly the way you felt when someone first taught you this as a child. The guardian angel is there. It's always there. That's the doctrine. That's what you know. And you fold it away the same way you fold a letter you've already read, carefully, with respect, into the back of the drawer where the things you believe live. But here's where it gets interesting. Padre Pio didn't just write about guardian angels. He saw them. Not metaphorically, not in visions that could be interpreted away as the product of an overactive mystical imagination. He saw them the way you see the person sitting across from you at dinner. His biographers, including Father Gabriele Amorth, who served as the Vatican's chief exorcist for over 30 years and personally investigated Padre Pio's mystical life, documented repeatedly and consistently that Pio's own guardian angel had appeared to him physically from the age of 5. 5 years old, not 40, not after decades of prayer and fasting and the stigmata and the ecstasies. 5. Father Amorth records it plainly in the collection on Padre Pio and the guardian angels published by the EWTN library. He played with him when he was a child, and the guardian angel sang for him when he was sad. Played with him, sang for him. These are not the words of mystical allegory. These are the words of a biographer describing something that the subject of his biography insisted was as literal as anything else in his life. So this wasn't a gift Pio developed gradually through asceticism. It wasn't a reward for bearing the stigmata. It was simply present, from the very beginning, as naturally as the sound of his own mother's voice. But here's the first crack in the comfortable version of this story. Pio didn't just see his own angel, he saw other people's angels too. And that is where the testimony I want to tell you about begins. There is a testimony recorded by a young seminarian named Deribert. It has been documented by Pio's biographers and referenced in Catholic sources, including Rorat Kiley's coverage of Padre Pio's mystical gifts. I want to walk through this testimony carefully because the details are not decorative. The details are the whole point. This young man, a seminary student, educated, theologically formed, preparing for ordination, came to Padre Pio for confession. Pio heard his confession. He gave him absolution. The sacrament was complete. The young man had received what he came for and was preparing to leave. And then Padre Pio stopped him. He asked, quietly. So quietly that Deribert later said he wasn't sure if Pio was asking him or asking the air around him. "Do you believe in your guardian angel?" The seminarian hesitated. That hesitation is important. He wasn't an atheist. He wasn't a skeptic. He was studying to be a priest. But there is a kind of belief that lives entirely in the head, doctrinal, tidy, framed and hung on the wall. And there is a kind of belief that lives in the body, in the gut, in the way you actually move through your days. Deribert believed in his guardian angel the way most of us believe in things we've never seriously doubted and never seriously tested. Padre Pio looked at him. And then, and this is the part the testimony records with particular care, Padre Pio reached out and gave the young man 2 light taps on the side of his face. Not harsh. The testimony does not describe it as harsh or painful. 2 taps. Sharp. Deliberate. The way a teacher might tap a desk to get a student's attention when the student has drifted somewhere else inside his own head. And Pio said, "Look carefully. It's there. And it's very beautiful." The seminarian saw nothing. He turned. He looked where Pio was looking. He saw the empty air of a confessor's room. But he noticed something else, something that he later described to the biographer who recorded this account. He noticed that Padre Pio's eyes had changed. They were luminous. The biographer's description records that Pio's eyes appeared to be reflecting light. A light that was not coming from the candles in the room. A light that seemed to be coming from somewhere outside the visible spectrum of that ordinary afternoon. As if his eyes were not looking at the room. As if they were open to something else that was occupying the same space the room occupied. He was seeing the angel. Now stop there. If you're tracking this carefully, and I want you to track it carefully, because this is not a story about a superstitious friar in the Italian countryside. You should feel something shift. The seminarian was a young man, educated, not someone who had lived a life of spectacular sin, not someone carrying enormous spiritual debt. He was in a seminary for the love of God. His soul was in relatively good shape, and his angel was there, present. Pio could see it, and it was, in Pio's precise words, very beautiful. Now I want you to do something. I want you to stop thinking about the seminarian for a moment and think about yourself. If Padre Pio had looked past your shoulder right now, with those eyes that had gone luminous in a confessor's room in San Giovanni Rotondo, what do you imagine he would have seen? Think honestly. Not harshly? Honestly. But I want to go even deeper than that, because there is a specific piece of theological reasoning in Father Chad Ripperger's work on diabolic warfare that almost nobody connects to the Deribert testimony. And when you connect them, the whole picture changes. Hold on, you told me, at the very beginning of this conversation, that you already know every child has a guardian angel. You were right, but you did not know what that means. Father Chad Ripperger, one of the most serious and careful Catholic exorcist theologians working in the English-speaking world today, the author of Dominion, The Nature of Diabolic Warfare, a man who has spent decades in the direct confrontation of spiritual evil in the context of formal exorcism, explains something in his work that is almost never addressed in ordinary parish theology. He explains that the guardian angel of a child is not merely present. It is proportionally more active, more visible in the spiritual realm, more fully and immediately engaged than the guardian angel of an adult who carries unresolved spiritual debt. Read that again, slowly. More visible in the spiritual realm. The reason is precise. Ripperger is not being poetic. He is being theological. A child who has not yet committed mortal sin does not carry the legal spiritual conditions that create distance between the soul and its angel. There is no accumulated debt of grave sin. There is no pattern of willful turning away. There is no wall built, brick by brick, from years of choosing something lesser than God and failing to return completely to Him. The angel of a child stands close, fully close, in a way that adult spiritual life almost never recaptures, not because God loves the child more, not because the child has earned special angelic attention, but because there is simply nothing in the way. Mortal sin creates distance, not absence. Distance. Unconfessed grave sin creates further distance, and the slow spiritual compromise of ordinary adult life, the drift, the half-repentance, the masses attended as social obligation, the prayers said as habit rather than conversation, the years of choosing comfort over conversion, that creates its own kind of distance too. Not abandonment. Never abandonment. Padre Pio said it himself in writing, in a letter that is still in the historical record. From the cradle to the grave, never for an instant. The angel does not leave, but it can be dimmed in the spiritual atmosphere the way a lamp is dimmed when you turn the dial down. Still burning, still present, still doing everything an angel can do, but not at full brightness. Now, consider what this means when you set it beside the Ripperger testimony. When Padre Pio looked at that seminary student and his eyes went luminous, he was seeing an angel, a presence visible enough to reflect actual light in the physical eyes of the man who could see it. Because this young man, whatever his imperfections, was not carrying the kind of spiritual debt that would have dimmed his angel significantly. His soul was reasonably clean. He was in a confessional. He had just received absolution. His angel stood close, and Pio's eyes went luminous. Now ask yourself what would have happened, what Padre Pio would have seen, if instead of a seminary student, a child had walked into that confessional. Not a young man of 22 with the normal complications of seminary life. A child, 7 years old, 8, a little girl in a white dress, a boy in his Sunday coat, a child who has never committed mortal sin, a child whose soul is, in the most literal theological sense, as clean as the morning of her baptism, a child whose guardian angel has nothing, not a single thing, creating distance from its charge. According to Ripperger's framework, that child's guardian angel would be standing at what we might call maximum nearness, fully active, fully visible in the spiritual realm, as present as the angel of God can possibly be to a living human being on this side of death. And Padre Pio, who could already see the seminarian's angel clearly enough that his eyes became windows reflecting its light, would have seen that child's angel not with merely luminous eyes. He would have seen something that made those luminous eyes look like what they were, a dim reflection of noon light. Now, here is what I believe actually shattered the parents. And I want to be careful here, because I'm a theology teacher, not a novelist, and I am not telling you a story I constructed. I am telling you the theological implication of things that are documented. I am extrapolating. Yes, but extrapolating from specific, sourced, recorded evidence. I am not inventing. Hundreds of Catholic families brought their children to Padre Pio over the course of his life at San Giovanni Rotondo. This is historical fact. Pilgrims came from across Italy, from across Europe, from across the world. They came sick, they came desperate, they came with questions, they came with grief, and they brought their children. And those parents, standing in the same room, watching Padre Pio look at their child, they expected something for themselves. Parents always do. When you stand in front of someone with genuine spiritual authority, someone who sees what you cannot, you are waiting for a message. You are waiting to be told about the danger, or the trial ahead, or the blessing coming, or the healing that was promised. You are waiting for the attention to be directed at you. What they were not prepared for was something far simpler and far more devastating. What Padre Pio saw when he looked at that child was a presence so near, so unobstructed, so radiant in the spiritual realm, so undimmed by anything the way adult souls are dimmed, that what he had to say was not about the child's future, or the child's health, or the child's vocation, or the child's anything. It was about the angel. It was about the beauty of what he could see right there, standing beside that small human being, a celestial spirit standing at full brightness, because there was nothing to push it back. And the parents, standing right next to their own child, carrying 30 or 40 or 50 years of accumulated distance, of adult sin and adult compromise and adult drift. The parents could not see it. Their child was living in that moment in the visible presence of God's messenger, in the full nearness of the invisible world, walking around in it without even knowing it, the way children breathe air they've never had to stop and name. And the parents could not see it. That was the shattering. Not a prophecy. Not a warning. Not a threat. The simple, undeniable, visible fact that their child was inhabiting a closeness to God that they, as adults, had somewhere along the way, not dramatically, not with a single catastrophic choice, but slowly, quietly, almost imperceptibly, moved away from. Their child wasn't just protected, their child was accompanied, and they were standing in the same room, believing they knew everything there was to know about guardian angels, and they had no idea. I need to tell you something that weighs on me about this. When I lost my wife Margaret 3 years ago, I was not prepared for what grief does to a person who has spent their life in theology. You would think it would help. You would think that 35 years of teaching the faith would have built something sturdy enough to hold you when the worst thing happens. It does, and it doesn't. What it does is give you a vocabulary for what you're feeling. What it doesn't do is take the weight of it away, not even for a single afternoon. I spent many nights in the first year after Margaret died reading through Padre Pio's Epistolario at my kitchen table. The house was very quiet. I had a lamp on, and I kept coming back to this question. Where is she now? What does that actually mean? And where is the invisible world that Pio insisted was not separate from this one? The world of angels and souls and the presence of God, which Pio seemed to move in and out of as naturally as you and I move between rooms. And what kept coming back to me in those late evenings was not the grand mystical doctrine. It was the image of those luminous eyes, Padre Pio's eyes going luminous in front of the seminarian, because it meant the invisible world is not far. It is not behind some locked door that only the specially initiated can open. It is here. It is in the same room. It is standing beside the person sitting next to you, and the only thing that determines whether someone like Pio can see it clearly or dimly or hardly at all is the state of the soul it stands beside. I've taught Catholic theology for 35 years. I've explained the doctrine of the guardian angels carefully, completely, to thousands of students. I covered the Catechism. I covered the scripture passages. I covered the tradition. But I had never stopped to sit with this particular implication. The closeness of a guardian angel is not fixed. It is not the same for everyone. It is not the same at every point in your life. There are seasons in a soul when the angel stands the way it stood over you as a child, near enough for someone with Padre Pio's spiritual sight to see it as a luminous, beautiful presence, present and full. And there are seasons when the angel is present, but dimmed, present but distant, present but doing the work of guarding a soul that has created conditions for distance, and doing that work faithfully, but from further back. The Catechism of the Catholic Church says it plainly in paragraph 336, citing Christ's own words from the 18th chapter of Matthew. "See that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I tell you that in heaven their angels always see the face of my Father." Always. The angels of children always see the face of God. That is specific language. It is not language used of adult angels in the same unqualified, categorical way, not because God withholds his face from the angels of adults, but because Jesus said it in the context of speaking about children, about their particular nearness to the kingdom, about the particular purity of soul that makes that nearness visible. He said it looking at a child. He did not say it looking at the Pharisees. He did not say it looking at the disciples, who were adults with adult complications and adult failures. He said it looking at a child. And Padre Pio spent his entire life insisting that the invisible world is not distant. It is here. It is in the room. The question is whether you are spiritually close enough to the angel beside you to feel its presence, let alone to make it visible to someone like Pio. Think about your own life for a moment. Not abstractly. Actually, if Padre Pio were standing in the room where you are right now, with those eyes that went luminous in front of a seminary student whose soul was reasonably clean, what would he see when he looked at you? I'm not asking what he would judge. I'm not asking what verdict he would render. I'm asking what he would see. Would your angel be standing close? Would those eyes of his light up the way they did with young Derobert in the confessional? Or is there something, not that your angel has left? Never that, Pio said it himself, from the cradle to the grave, but something that has created distance? A confession you've postponed for months, telling yourself you'll get to it when things settle down. A grudge you've held so long it's become part of how you understand a relationship. A prayer life that has gradually become a performance, something you do at the right times in the right words for the right number of minutes, rather than an actual conversation with an actual presence, a slow, quiet, almost invisible accumulation of things that dim the spiritual atmosphere around you. These things do not destroy the relationship. That is the mercy. The angel does not leave. The letter says it, and the tradition confirms it. From the cradle to the grave, not for an instant, but they change the quality of the nearness. Rino Camilleri's account of Padre Pio, drawing from the testimonies of Pio's spiritual daughters and documented in following padrepio.org's archival material, records something remarkable. Pio's spiritual children came to him and described how he seemed not just to sense their guardian angels, but to know them personally, to know their names. In documented accounts, Pio sent his own angel to comfort people who were far away and suffering, as a kind of celestial messenger, as if the geography of the invisible world was simply an extension of the geography of this one. And when Pio was forbidden from answering correspondence in 1923, when the church authorities, in one of the most agonizing periods of his life, prohibited him from responding to the flood of letters he received from people in spiritual need, he gave his spiritual children an instruction that tells you everything about how operational his relationship with the angels was. He said, "Send me all your requests through your guardian angel. Not through a priest, not through a letter, through your guardian angel. Because your guardian angel is not a symbol of divine protection. Your guardian angel is a person, a celestial person, a created spirit of enormous intelligence and power, and care, who has been assigned to you specifically and who takes that assignment with a seriousness that we almost never match in our own understanding of the relationship. And the thing about children, the thing that made Pio's eyes go luminous in a way that shattered parents, is that children haven't yet learned not to take it seriously. They haven't yet been trained into the sophisticated adult capacity for believing something doctrinally while living as though it doesn't actually apply to their daily existence. They haven't yet built the walls of adult rationalism that turn the invisible world into a background comfort rather than a present reality. They pray the angel of God prayer, and they mean it in a way that most adults do not mean it, because they haven't yet learned to half-mean things. That's why the angel is near. That's why the angel of a child is standing at maximum presence in the spiritual realm. That's why Pio's eyes went luminous for the seminary student, a young man who was still closer to that child state than most adults ever return to. And that's why, when Pio looked at a child, whatever he saw made what he said about it feel. To the adults standing next to that child, like being handed a mirror they hadn't asked for. Here is the thing nobody says out loud about this. Your child's guardian angel is simultaneously an indictment and an invitation. An indictment because it shows you what nearness looks like. It stands right there, full and bright and close, next to a soul that hasn't yet built the walls you've built. And it shows you the distance you've traveled from that kind of nearness. Not through malice, not through spectacular evil, through ordinary adult drift, through the slow erosion of a faith that starts as fire and, if you're not paying attention, gradually becomes furniture. And an invitation, because every act of genuine return brings your own angel back to something closer to that fullness. Every sacramental confession. Not the hasty one, the genuine one, the one where you actually examine your conscience and name the things you've been carrying. Every one of those confessions clears something. Every genuine act of conversion, even a small one, shifts the atmosphere. Every prayer said from the heart rather than from habit. Every morning when you take 30 seconds to actually speak to the angel beside you rather than treating it as a theological abstraction. Every one of those moments closes the distance. Not perfectly, not all at once, but incrementally, genuinely. You can close the distance. That is the hope hidden inside what shattered the parents. The parents were shattered because Padre Pio saw what was beside their child and named it beautiful. But the same capacity in Pio that could see the fullness of a child's angel could also see, according to the testimony of his spiritual daughters, the recovery of an adult's angel after genuine conversion. He could see the brightness return. He wrote it to Raffaelina in that same letter from 1915 with complete pastoral gentleness. This should be a source of constant consolation for us, especially during the saddest times of our lives. He wasn't writing that for the saints. He wasn't writing it for people who had everything perfectly arranged in their spiritual lives. He was writing it to a woman who was sick and suffering and frightened and far from the certainties she had hoped for. He was writing it as comfort for an adult who knew, in the way adults know things, that she had not always lived up to the brightness she had started with. The angel is still there. It has never been anywhere else, from the cradle to the grave. But Pio is asking you, the same way he asked that young seminary student with 2 deliberate taps on the side of the face, the way a teacher asks a student who has drifted. He is asking whether you actually believe it. Not in the way you believe a definition, in the way that changes how you live tomorrow morning, in the way that makes you stop, just for a moment before you get out of bed, and say something real to the presence beside you. The presence that has been beside you since the day you were born, and that has been waiting with a patience that has no human equivalent for you to remember that it is there. Your child's guardian angel is standing close enough for God to see its face. The question is whether you're still standing close enough for it to see yours. If this connected with something real in you today, If you're sitting with something about your own children, your own distance, the things that have accumulated quietly over the years, consider leaving a super thanks. It helps this channel continue producing the kind of serious, sourced, deeply researched theological content that is genuinely difficult to find. I read every single one, and right now, coming out of a few years of grief and rebuilding, it means more than you know. I want to hear from you. Tell me, when you pray the Angel of God prayer with your children at night, is it something you feel? Or has it become habit? The beautiful, faithful kind of habit that has somehow become a little distant from what it was when you first believed it. And if Padre Pio had looked at you tonight, with those eyes that reflected a light that wasn't coming from any lamp in the room, what do you think he would have seen? I'll be in the comments. I read all of them. Let's talk about this.